Glad to have you here. First question out the gate. You're a five-time CMO. You've been at Science for 6 years. It's about a
Yeah.
6-year run, right?
Yeah.
If it ended today, what's next for Eric?
Probably more of the same.
Okay.
I really actually love the CMO role and being part of kind of a marketing department, marketing team. I oftentimes say that I view marketing as a craft and myself as a craftsman.
Hmm.
Um, I actually anticipate that I'll work probably well past the retirement age because I really kind of get off and like the aspects of the job that are kind of eternal. For instance, figuring out buyer psychology,
Yeah.
like when anyone says, hey, 30, 60, 90-day plan, where do you start with any, kind of like marketing program? Well, you start with who your buyer is or should be. And, figuring out kind of like where those people are, what's important to them, kind of need or problem space associated with our product or service, and then building out a lot of kind of overlays. And we can get into all that and how they work into marketing programs. But that's me in a nutshell. I'm endlessly fascinated by marketing. It's changed a ton
Yeah.
since I got into, and like my first CMO role, compared to now, like the marketing mix, the activities that we did, campaigns that we ran, completely different.
Offline to
Um,
online alone investments. Yeah.
there weren't even social networks back then. I'm like,
I was on an interview this morning, and I was at Verizon mid 2000s, and I was explaining to them the idea of the Palm Trio. And they're like, "What the hell is that?" Yeah, I kind of dated myself there.
I work for a company where one of our big marketing initiatives way back in the day was launching on Orkut, which used to be Google's social network of all things,
Never knew that. Good
where they put it
knowledge.
out to pasture. And it was like, you know, just even talking about like social networks that are no longer, it's like, who cares about Friendster and MySpace?
Nice. Yeah, right. So one question I want to know, just in the vein of your journey, is how did you go from journalism
Yeah.
to the convergence of marketing and sales?
Well, again, a little bit of age on it, but I graduated from San Diego State in the mid 1990s, and then took a job and was really on the broadcast journalism side of the house at what was then News Corporation,
Hmm.
better known to the world as Fox. Still, those brands dominate. They've taken on a much different kind of like brand impression than when I was there, for sure. Like for instance, on my business card way back in the day was, foxnews.com. And, I used to run their West Coast internet division. And it was fascinating because back then we were number 3 with a lead weight, like just looking up at CNN and MSNBC and wondering how we could get like to that place. Now I think Fox does not view themselves as necessarily competitive in the same ways with CNN or
Hmm.
MSNBC whatsoever.
Right. Not in the same lane at all.
No, completely different.
Right.
So at any rate, the transition really happened at Fox, where kind of like internet early days.
That makes sense.
Um, I came over from the broadcast side and was kind of a young whippersnapper that like started to get the new medium, if you will. And back then, everything was catch as catch can. Inside the bowels of this
Say that again.
ginormous
Everything is what?
catch as catch can,
What is,
like
I've never heard that.
um, we had resources, but a lot of those resources like were what we could scare up within kind of like this huge media conglomerate.
Hmm.
So for instance, like if we wanted to run a story on foxsports.com or a video, for instance, we would go, knock on the door of our broadcast counterparts and say, "Hey, can we run the highlights of blah, blah, blah?" You know, we would do all kinds of like really, almost looking back on it, it was like, wow, that this was completely like random that any of this stuff went on, but it was wild, wild west. Like we did the
Hmm.
first, technically,
Got
I
it.
think it was a podcast halftime show of a Super Bowl that Fox was airing on foxsports.com, mainly because, like we thought it was going to be good content.
Hmm.
And so at any rate, that there's a lot of fun kind of like stories there, but it was really immature and very, again, catch catch as catch can,
Catch can. All right.
back in the day.
So what taught you more? I want to know this as well. You got your bachelor's in journalism, went on to get your MBA in marketing. So you had that track and learned a lot, I'm sure, in that experience. But you also have been a CMO 5 times. So not that one would happen without the other, but I'm curious, and when you look back, what taught you more, the schooling or the time as a CMO?
I would say um, all are lessons that you take away and that you build on, like I would even add various other roles in businesses, and even, wearing my NorCal or Silicon Valley experiences like a badge of honor. Failure is a great teacher too.
Mm.
Things that you tried that didn't quite work, but that you realized a lot of, you're that much closer to success when you kind of figure out what lanes.
Scientific mode. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's a pretty healthy way of thinking, especially in a marketing department, when you can start to identify, where, what are campaigns, what are activities, what are things that we could be doing, what are go-to-market channels that we could be leveraging, and then what do I want to look for from an ROI perspective? How do I know when to cut bait on a channel that's not working, or something that isn't delivering the kind of performance that we think it should,
Mm.
or even, kind of green fielding, like, hey, should we be doing this? Like, those are the real learning lessons, as far as I'm concerned, throughout my career.
Good answer. Good answer. So it was not necessarily one or the other. It's the failures mostly that taught us. And I can agree 100%. I think I formed my practice. I think I shared that with you on our interview, out of failure and being, going through some learning lessons in my career.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, very good. So last question on the journey front. Not every revenue leader that's tuning in has had the opportunity, if you want to call it that, to lead through a downturned economy. You were running marketing and business development at Logitech in 2008, 2009, during that whole era. So I'm
Yep.
curious, you led through it, right? You came out in 2009, you kept growing your career. I'm just curious though, for that leader that's running marketing for the first time, running sales for the business development for the first time in this downturn, and what might be get worse. We don't know. I don't want to speculate, right? But
Yeah.
we're at that point. What did you learn, and how are you, and what lessons are you like leaning on now that are helping science stay ahead of the curve?
Set realistic expectations would be number
Mm.
one. So I think one of the things that happens in sales and marketing, in good times, is what's this year's quota? Oh, what did we do last year? Add 10%. Great.
Right.
There we go. Whether it's SDRs,
Arbitrarily
total
just,
sales,
yeah.
quota by geo, whatever.
Who cares what's
Uh,
happening in the market?
yeah, in a downturn, that axiom and that kind of like lack of strategic thought doesn't even apply, because everything becomes harder, and everything becomes more scrutinized, and there's greater risk aversion. That's kind of what a downturn means, right? It's like greed, fear cycles, swinging back and forth. You're more into the fear cycle. One of the things I can say, having worked in tech basically for the last 2 decades, is it was probably even harder, the tech downturn of the early aughts, started by the NASDAQ crash in 2000, March of 2000. That was probably way harder than even kind of the Great Recession of 08, 09 for me personally, largely because tech was so directly impacted.
Mm.
I'm seeing some harbingers or some rhyming of tech and tech layoffs and what's going on right now, end of 22 into 23, that remind me a lot more of kind of like the tech downturn of, again, 2 decades ago, than I am the Great Recession, kind of 08, 09, because tech actually didn't get beat up as badly, I think, as other sectors
Well,
did.
yeah, I mean, I was in telecom at the time. So, that's the iPhone dropped. A lot of things still were transformative at that time. And
Transformative,
yeah,
great innovation. I mean, I still think of very acutely, probably like the call it 2009 to 2012. Maybe it was because of the company I was with, but like the formation and the advent of cloud computing
Right.
was really huge and very meaningful to the way you did everything, how everyone kind of looked at the world, this transition away from, and I say move to cloud because I think that that also affected ephemeral things like business models. So like a good example of that would be, most people don't remember this if they didn't live through it. When you used to buy software, it used to be a one-time purchase, a huge amount with 18% annual maintenance, like that's your software model. Now, I don't even know a company that does that model. Everything's SaaS, software
Right.
as a service,
Right.
everything's a monthly fee. And the main reason for that is because all of that software is delivered from the cloud. And essentially it's like a rental model that everyone takes for granted,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the kind of the way of the world. And, I even remember a
Co-tenants. Mm-hmm.
totally,
Mm-hmm.
totally. Like a good focal point for that exact move, I've always felt was Adobe, right? Like a very familiar brand name. Most people with any kind of creative spark of anything have touched an Adobe product through their lifespan. And again, like Photoshop or Illustrator or any Adobe product prior to, call it 2012, was bought on a one-time license. There's usually version numbers, like Photoshop 5.0. And then they made a massive shift in their business to, make everything kind of recurring revenue. I remember their stock getting absolutely like hammered in that shift. And it was a lot of pain and a lot of like sturm and drang to get through that piece. And now, they're on the other side and their valuations are just like, they've reaped the whirlwind from transitioning to a better business model.
Do you feel like we're at that same point now, that same point of inflection in the technological space with AI?
I do. In fact, even more so, and it's happening
Mm.
faster. And so I think that it's really more of the technology has moved so far so fast and been unsheathed in almost like some accidental ways. Like ChatGPT is a good example. I was reading the stats the other day. OpenAI.com is the parent company of ChatGPT, and their traffic in pre kind of like launch of ChatGPT, OpenAI's traffic was around 18 million unique visitors in November of 22. That same number in Feb of 23 was 665 million. Like, think about that for a second. Like, and they claim, over 100 million active users per day now on
Yeah, I'm on
ChatGPT.
there every day. Mm-hmm.
It's been faster than any social network has achieved that type of escape velocity.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't think of another B2B tool that has a relevant precedence. And this is all coming during the time, at least the way it shapes up in my own little mental narrative, where you say to yourself, oh, this is a use case. Okay, I could use it for this reason. Or, oh, wait a minute, this would help. Oh, and it's like, it's not even being coded.
Exponential use cases that, and this, we just haven't uncovered it all yet, even. Yeah.
Oh, we're so early innings.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what's funny is it's not coming the way most things in a corporation come, which is top down. It's
Right.
not
Absolutely.
coming by like
Mm-hmm.
leaders of the company saying, hey, you got to get on Chat GPT and
Well,
do.
bring your own device. You talked about cloud computing.
It's
It
true.
did usher in some of that, I think. I think there was a bring your own, device, your laptops, your phones. There was, we have product-led adoption now. I mean, but that's probably still the freemium models last 5-10 years more so. You're right.
Yeah. And so I think that companies everywhere are coming to grips with, how should we be leveraging this
Mm-hmm.
technology?
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to lead? What does it mean to incorporate? What are my people doing with the tech? Where is it right to use? I
Right.
think there's definitely a lot of fear and uncertainty and doubt around like, does this mean somebody's job is going to be lost? Is that, are things going to be obsolesced? There's a lot of it's ironic that the Oscar winning film of the last year was Everything Everywhere All at Once, because it couldn't be a better meme
Right.
for the time that we are now living in, especially in the business on the business landscape.
Yeah, it's I feel like there's using AI in your product as a business, finding that way, right? Using it in your go-to-market, right? Servicing clients, getting new clients, marketing to clients, and then the operational arm of your business, finding those ways to drive efficiency, whether it be in, I don't know, back office or in supply chain, you name it. I think these are the areas that you have to at this point, even we were talking about this in our interview, the arms race around this, because if you're not implementing and leveraging and finding it, you're exponentially being left behind. Every day that you aren't incorporating this somehow, some way, your next closest competitor is either gaining market share even further, or they're coming biting on your heels. It's a game changer. That's why I think. So how are you leveraging it today? I know you have a software arm of your business. So I know there's probably somewhere in there that you might be leveraging it, but is Cience using Chat GPT in the product? Are you using it in go-to-market motions on behalf of clients and your people as a service offerings? Talk to us about how you're incorporating it.
I believe the correct answer is D, all of the above.
Okay, cool.
The
All right.
multiple choice
Break it
test.
down.
Yeah. So it's funny. I was actually just staring at goai.science.com, which is our own chatbot that we just built as an LLM, where we're feeding and fed the tool kind of like all science literature, collateral, web pages, our podcast, everything over the last 8 years of our existence, and is now like literally a chat bot that you can interact with, ask any questions about science, and it'll spit back an answer for you on demand. That was proof of concept one. We now are in the throes of rolling that out to each and every one of our clients, because we also sell a product called Science Go Chat, and we're going to be folding in kind of the AI from our labs, if you will, to do the exact same. So
are you converting that way, or is it still serving up? Is the chat bot that you're using now facilitating new discovery meetings that are being coordinated and booked on calendar? Like, how far is it taking that conversation?
Yeah, so we're right at the point where we're about to intersect the AI into the chat itself, to where we can let the bot handle all the conversations and then feed to our scheduling tool, Go Schedule. So that is the design, that is the goal, that is what we will be selling to clients who partner with us going forward. But the exciting thing is kind of leveraging this idea that, hey, just by applying an LLM, we can provide more value to our clients in every kind of what we like to refer to as partnership that we're getting into, in ways that maybe they didn't even expect when they signed up with Cience in the first place. And so that's delightful as far as I'm concerned. And I'm super excited to see where it all goes, because I don't see a downside to doing that, especially for the businesses that we work with that may not even have their own resources, may not have their own kind of like vision to kind of build something like this out, and then
or to
really
operationalize it even, because in theory it sounds great, but orchestrating an implementation around this stuff isn't always super simple. And so having someone that can kind of do it for you on your behalf, that has it built and has the level of sophistication that you guys do, I can see why they would partner with you. I want to take a step back, if you don't mind. I wanted to ask, I would be remiss if I didn't ask about certain things since I'm talking to a CMO, and one of those has to do with alignment with sales. Can you talk to the audience about what the dynamic looks like with your current sales leader, and how do you shape a strong alignment in your current state, and what would you recommend to those that are listening?
Yeah, great question. And what I would say is I think I learned a few CMO roles back a pretty valuable lesson, and it's one that I maybe even had a sea change myself on this thinking. But I truly believe that marketing serves sales. And by saying that, it actually aligns virtually everything that you ever do kind of like by default. So that ultimately, if you believed, as I once did, that marketing was kind of an independent island, kind of doing its thing, judged on its own KPIs, incentivized and bonused on its own KPIs. One of the hard lessons that I learned was kind of like I refer to as like one hand clapping or one hand high fiving. Because the loneliest, worst feeling is when marketing crushes their numbers. Oh my God, our inbound MQLs are up like 25% quarter over quarter, and we were amazing. And oh, sales missed their number by a pretty wide
Yeah,
margin.
that's doing the touchdown dance when we're down by 3 touchdowns in the last 2 minutes of the game. Like, what are you celebrating?
It doesn't work.
Right.
And the reverse, the reverse is the exact opposite. So like if marketing is struggling, but sales crushes it, people are usually like, okay, what do we need to do to pick marketing up? All right, like let's figure that out. What's going on there? Not that I've had a lot of marketing sucking, but like ultimately sales cures virtually all evils. Like
Fair. Yeah.
I've always said too that you always want your salespeople to be the highest compensated folks in your entire organization. Sales is much like water, where it finds a level, especially to comp plans. So whatever you incentivize and put into comp plans is what you're going to get. And so I'm a big believer that, in the kumbaya, or trying to get kumbaya between marketing and sales, if you have an understanding of, where the bread is buttered, and it is on close one net new revenue, it's on business, or, like expansion, basically taking and earning more revenue. Like that's the number at the end of the day. And then you can roll marketing metrics up to that all day long, and it'll be really healthy.
I love that sales is the customer that we're servicing ultimately. As a sales development focused person myself as well, that's the same flag I'm carrying is, how can we serve up the product that you want, Mr. Customer? How can we serve it in a way, and doing that product marketing analysis of understanding your customer and what they're looking for, right? Going to that degree with it. I agree with that 100%. Yeah, but in reality, it's really hard to shape that. Personality conflicts alone make it hard to do that, because on paper, connecting the teams through comp plans and things of that sort and metrics, it works for sure. But then there's just, good old fashioned, I don't like that person very much. So how do you solve that dynamic of like personality conflict and, finding that healthy dynamic in that space? Because a lot of the alignment or lack thereof within organizations stems from this relationship.
Yeah, it really does. And I would break no new ground if I said that marketing is actually pretty misunderstood or poorly understood by a lot of sales folks who, again, like rightly so, I think, don't necessarily care about the dirty details. Like, you want to watch people's eyes, especially on a sales team, roll back in their heads really fast. Just start going into the intricacies of like how to optimize an SEO page, right? Like
the color,
talking about keyword
the color
densities.
panel color code that we put in here, and the size of the logo. Yeah, we decided on this background graphic with this person because it conveyed this psychological. Yeah. I'm with you. I'm a marketer. I feel like I think you can't be a good salesperson if you're not a good marketer in this day and era. Yeah, but that's
probably
a different topic. Yeah.
But my bigger point is simply that, a lot of that misunderstanding, a lot of that kind of like lack of respect oftentimes that comes with marketing doesn't come from an evil, mean, bad person place. It comes from maybe just like an undereducated place and bigger priorities or bigger, goals to fill. The other the other ground that I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on is this. I also think that there's a strong impetus that I see disregarded amongst my marketing or CMO peers at their peril when they don't understand kind of like the concept of a salesperson's time. What do I mean by that? It's very easy for marketers to, again, like design everything under the sun to get to a place of an MQL. An MQL is usually like, can be content related, you know, like, hey, we got a great, you know, webinar that we're putting on with an amazing guest, and 1,000 people showed up, but they showed up for the great guests and that webinar, not so much to be in our sales cycle and to like kick off a buy cycle. Same with an ebook or a guide, or, you know, like a lot of the content motions that happen. I think this also happens around events a lot. You know, don't necessarily immediately translate one-to-one into sales cycle. And a rookie marketing mistake is to basically think that they do.
Right.
Another rookie marketing mistake is to think that all inbound is good inbound and you should throw everything over the fence that you get. That's not true at all.
Yeah, not at all. Right.
And so people that don't know how to qualify inbound properly and just pass it all to sales, like literally are teaching sales to distrust what comes from marketing. That sounds kind of harsh and a little bit like, you know, controversial when I say it, and I hear the words tumbling from my mouth. But a lot of that is built on kind of like what I've learned over the years around, you know, when you have a lot of trust built up in sales and people like realize that what you're doing is helping them.
Right.
Again, you're serving them from a sales perspective, and they can see line of sight to close one business for virtually all the leads that you provide, whether they're inbound, outbound, all bound, word of mouth, whatever. Like that's when the magic starts to really happen. That's when salespeople, that trust is everything, because then they really want to work
exactly
to
jointly.
fulfill
Yeah.
the vision, if you will, or fulfill the, you know, hey, as Jerry
They want to
Maguire
feed the
said,
flywheel, because now they start understanding that they can connect the dots between what's happening on the execution side or what's happening back on the strategy side with marketing, and how it's all coming together and influencing whether or not, you know, those touches you talked about earlier may not turn into buy cycles, but they may influence, you know, perception and where they are in a buyer's journey over time and that sort of thing. So I appreciate that you take that position with a great deal. And I know it's tough to straddle that fence. And, you know, I think that's the call for centralized roles like, you know, revenue officers are, you know, probably being thrown at that as a way to solve for that quickly. But, you know, it sounds like there are some means and ways, if you just position the mindset right, how you think about your function, you can inherently have greater alignment. So for those that are struggling, there you have it. So one sneak peek into your playbook, and then I want to zoom into what CIENSE is up to, if that's okay.
sure. Yeah.
I heard in another interview that you are rolling in your tech stack HubSpot and SalesLoft. So HubSpot CRM, probably using the marketing side as well, I presume.
We are.
And then SalesLoft integrated together. You've been running that for a little while? That setup?
We have. Yeah, we
Okay.
even use HubSpot CMS as our, you know, kind of
Content
management system and publishing, web publishing.
Very good. Salesforce certified, big HubSpot fan, SalesLoft certified. The thing though is, when I see HubSpot and SalesLoft set up, I don't always see it playing well. The integration can be hard to manage at times. I'm curious, what has been your experience with those two? And this might be a plug for that setup. Most often I try and encourage customers to go with, or clients to go with, HubSpot's sequencing tool as opposed to SalesLoft. With all honesty, SalesLoft, please don't stab me for that.
Yeah, we found some encumbrances of just being exclusively HubSpot, which we were for a while there, a few years back. We adopted SalesLoft, and frankly, it was a tool that opened the door to greater sales engagement, greater sales enablement for our entire fleet of hundreds of SDRs. And so, and we didn't really look back. So the thing for us was really around purpose-built tool for the job at hand, which was running sequences and doing everything out of a single platform that we wanted to do at the end of the day, right? Like, not to get deep in the weeds, but like the HubSpot dialer wasn't ready for prime time, couldn't be used in the way we wanted to use it. Bunch of features that weren't ready or were missing. Automated email cadences or sequences were another limitation. And again, this is coming from a HubSpot. You know, we were used to be a platinum partner of theirs.
Right.
So I have no like loss of love for them. I just think that
In this
Um,
particular area of the business, which both of us specialize in, it's an important topic. That sales engagement platform is where our SDRs spend the majority of their time.
yeah, and we want them to be really successful, especially when it's on behalf of our clients. So
Right, right.
at the end of the day, like we're more concerned with effectiveness and efficiency, both the E's, if you will, than just kind of trying to make life easier for us by single sourcing on one platform.
Okay, thank you for that. Got to give it another look and see how that integration is working. I know it works really well with Salesforce, but I saw some bugs with that Salesforce, SalesLoft, HubSpot, and data flow. You can bring Trade.io and some other things in to make it work. But moving on, besides your products and services, something that's not related to products or services, how is CIENSE different from other organizations that are a lead gen service?
Funny you should ask. If you want to learn some of the fact-based answer here, just go to leadgen.science.com and you can find a comparison between us and 238 of our closest competitors.
Wow, that's bold.
Yeah, it is. I like getting into their sales cycles too. At any rate, especially when we pop up as a search result that, like there we are. No, but like all kidding aside, I also like to think of us as being very holistic in our approach to sales development. Not the least of which the future of science and where we've been going, where we've been skating to where we think the puck is moving,
Right.
is really with our software-led approach. And so we've built an entire platform largely to service our own needs. So the platform has at present 7 different modules. I alluded to a few of them earlier in the call. Foundation module is Go Data. And so the data piece was something that we built over time. We used to do all of our data manually on the back of human researchers going out and, essentially finding like literally all the data pieces you would have necessary for a sequence, first name, last name, email, phone, blah, 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 blah. Like we now sit atop a database or a data subscription service, really, that's 200 million records deep and does a lot of other really kind of fun things as well. For instance, but baked into Go Data is another tool of ours called Go Intent. So this basically goes out and we have 33.8 million web pages that we monitor. We understand kind of like the topic that those pages are all about through NLP that we're getting. And then we watch and marry up with our identity graph what companies are hitting those pages. And voila, you have inferences to who might be in market for various topics. So that's Go Intent. We also have the data piece kind of like prevalent in our product Go Show. What that is a de-anonymization of web visit or website traffic. So people that are coming to your website, by the way, marketers out there, I'm going to speak to you for just a second. Like vast majority of people that come to your website do absolutely nothing and then they leave. In fact, most conversion rates are like 2%, 1% in the SaaS space. Like 99% of your traffic is like hitting you and going, bye-bye. What we love to do is basically take that 99%, especially then, match it up to who fits your ICP and go right after them. In fact, I would argue that should be the number one prioritized outbound motion. We call it inbound-led outbound. And what unlocks that door is the ability to know who's actually on your website. So that
Question for you on that topic, though.
Yep.
Isn't there a dependence on one's ability to drive traffic to its website in order for that 97% to get to a material amount where you would go outbound to it? Like you have 50,000 visitors coming to your website, unique visitors every month. You mentioned that. That's a lot. Not everybody is at that stage, particularly in an early stage startup organization. They're lucky if they're getting anywhere near that, right? So the inbound-led outbound model, targeting people who have been to your website that you have, I'm going to butcher this word, de-anonymized.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Caller ID
So
for the web. How's that?
caller ID for the web. Thank you. That makes it a lot easier. But yes, so you're limited to that pool if you're not driving a lot to your website. So one question I want to ask about your service offering is, how do you prepare your agents, your SDRs, for these client engagements where they're outbounding on their behalf? Like, how do they close the skill gap? And because they're not warmed up as much, right? I think that's kind of what I'm trying to say here, is that some
Yeah.
of these leads might be familiar with you, but in some of these outbound campaigns that you're working on, I would imagine that they're not familiar and they don't have some of that web traffic.
Well, so two answers to that, and at the risk of sounding pitchy, because I don't want to sound pitchy, we
You let me
solved
pitch. Go ahead and pitch.
we solved the demand problem because we also have Science Go Digital, which is a demand side platform, an ad network where we basically can throw ads across whatever your total addressable market is. Let's say it's 50,000 folks.
Mhm.
We can get in front of them and drive them to your website. So that's one of the ways we're answering that question. But to
Okay.
your second question, this is actually the heart of the rationale for why inbound led outbound over and above other forms of outbound, for instance, list led outbound.
Right. Right.
So I would argue, or I would submit to you, submitted for your approval, the idea that most list led outbound is as cold can get. In other words, I'm a vendor, I pull the list, I then work that list, whether it's A to Z or Geo or however I'm going to attack that list. The people that landed on that list, they had no hand in that. They were not like part of the equation, if you will, other than fitting the ICP parameters.
Yeah, likely not in the buyer's journey path whatsoever. You talk a lot about and plotting yourself appropriately there. They're not
Exactly.
even thinking about, but that's sales though. A lot of times is getting
It
people
is.
to
It's cold
understand.
start.
Yeah, cold start.
All I'm suggesting is, if possible, and it doesn't have to be all campaigns. In fact, I view this more as an additive campaign, or the word I really love is prioritized campaign.
Okay.
So that when you can watch your website, when you can kind of screen and monitor and then ultimately read and react, so that people are being matched to who's visiting your website every minute of every business day, right? Like depending on traffic. As they come through, you then run a screen and say, is this part of my ICP? Does it match? Does this contact and company, are they someone I would want to do business with? If yes, launch an outbound campaign. And now what's different is that warmth, right? So when I call up and say, hey, I'm calling from Science, yeah, that's Science without an S. And I don't even need to mention that I saw you on my website and potentially creep people out. Like, I can rely on serendipity and timing,
Right.
and the fact that, like, wait a minute, Science, I was just on your website.
Yeah, you're
Well,
positioning
yeah,
certain situational questions around probing and opening statements that infer
yeah.
and create that serendipitous situation. Right. Very good.
I mean, I'm a big fan. So, quick messaging tip here. I'm a big fan of continuing to do the things that work in normal list led outbound in inbound led outbound, such as personalization, such as putting the buyer first, right? Like the problem space that they are likely, what might be their likely need,
Mhm.
so that ultimately I can still have that substantive conversation, still kick off a sales cycle based around them, because they're the apple of our eye, they're the object of our affection, always. It's not about us, or it is, but it isn't yet. You know what I'm saying?
Right. For the guide, they're the hero.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. If you take a kind of a story selling kind of perspective,
Framework. Yeah.
yeah, I think that is, you'll never go wrong. Much like I was giving the advice earlier about being the servant, like from a marketing sales perspective, I don't think you'll ever go wrong putting the customer in the role of hero.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, ever. I can't even think of a time.
Yeah. And don't make the mistake of trying to make your competition the villain either.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Sometimes that'll work.
last question for you, and we'll wrap. What does it look like, or does your organization ever work alongside in-house SDR teams? What does that
All the
look like?
time.
All the time? What does that look
Oh,
like?
yeah. It usually looks like swim lanes that are established around, if we are doing list led outbound, it would be working a given patch, whether that patch is defined by a product set, or a geo, or a certain tier of contacts. There's a million ways to slice and dice and segment, but we basically work kind of alongside. Since in every case where science is stood up and is working in partnership with our clients, we represent as them.
Right.
So people don't even know,
Don't know the
science
difference.
exists. You know, we're I like to say, I think by total revenues, our biggest client right now is Amazon. So it's not like we're reaching out from a science.com domain on behalf of Amazon. It's at Amazon.com.
It's an OEM white labeled arrangement. Yeah.
That's right.
Cool. Well, this has been great. It's been enlightening. I appreciate you coming on the show and having me on yours originally. It's been great getting to know you. Hopefully we can keep the doors of communication open. Where should people go to find you, and give them the website as well?
Sure. Yeah. Finding me is actually super easy. Way too many prospectors do it.
The last name, right?
There's really not that many Quanstroms out in the world today, largely because the name was changed through Ellis Island way back a few generations ago. And,
late 1800s, early 1900s was the first started to emerge. I was looking at that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I often ruminate and reflect on the fact that like one, I don't know, gate operator at Ellis Island, like forever changed the trajectory of like, at least my family surname forevermore, like, cause they couldn't pronounce Quanstrom with a KV and a umlaut. Like it was just too big of a task, I guess. And said,
interesting story.
No, you're Quanstrom with a Q now. So here you go.
There it is. Very good. EQ though.
Yes,
the
that's
EQ is
right.
on point. Cool.
And
so
then if
find you on LinkedIn. Now it's science without the S.
Yes.
Is that .com or is that
.com.
IO, AI? We can't keep up these days.
I think we own virtually all the other extensions, but why not go to the .com?